7 to 10 range. But ESPN released their stats-based win projection. And the stats-based win projection, Ramie, says that the Kings are going to miss the play-in. The top 10 teams in the Western Conference: Phoenix, Denver, New Orleans, Memphis, Minnesota, Clippers, Dallas Mavericks, Warriors, Lakers, and the Trailblazers. Now, here's what I would say. There's a clear difference when you look at the ESPN stats-based projections between the top 8 teams and the rest. Clear difference. All the other teams in the top 8 are pretty much at 42 wins or more. Once you hit 9-10 with the Lakers and Portland, you're at 36. And I know a lot of people are like kind of reacting like, I can't believe the Kings are out of the play-in. The ESPN. Let me describe to all of you the difference of this ESPN stats-based projection. The Lakers, 36.8 wins. The Blazers, 36.6 wins.
We're talking about fractions.
The Kings, 36.5. So what they're telling you is what Ramie and I talked about earlier this week.
Could be any one of those.
It is a
teams.
flip of the coin between the Lakers, the Blazers, and the Kings. That's what this stats-based projection is telling you. That it's going to be really, really, really tight at the bottom of the Western Conference when you're talking about the top 10 seeds that obviously get into the play-in and or playoffs. So it's razor thin. But if you were wondering how ESPN feels, well, we know how at least Zach Lowe feels. Here he was on his podcast talking about the Kings.
I think there's a pretty hard and low ceiling on what this team can be defensively, and I don't see like a top 5 offense, but I think they're going to be in this play-in race, and I do think those over-under numbers really underrate them. I think they're going to be a solid team and fun. I think they'll be fun.
Solid team and fun. And I think Kings fans, yes, I know, we all want to get to the playoffs. We would all love the play-in. But if this team is competitive and it's fun and you feel like they took a step, I know Kings fans, a lot of you don't want to hear it, but I think you should feel good about that. If you took the step, you're competitive, the roster's good. Again, the Western Conference is loaded. Here is more from Zach Lowe.
Their over-under is like 32.5 or 33.5. Vegas just thinks the Kings are bad, that they're just a bad team, typical bad, crappy Sacramento Kings, way below the play-in, way below Portland. And I got to tell you, KP, look, I understand skepticism about the Sacramento Kings. That number seems low to me.
Your thoughts, Ramie, about the stats-based projection and what Zach Lowe saying?
The number that Vegas has sounds
it's low.
Sounds very low.
We said
me.
That when it came out.
Even 36.5 or whatever it ended up being for the set. To me, and again, Nick, maybe we're in the bubble and we're seeing this thing and it looks a lot better to us than it really is, and than it does to people outside the bubble of talking about and covering the Kings on a day-to-day basis, as Sactown Sports does, like no one else does. But 36 even, and this is splitting hairs, I see 38, 39, 40 wins in this Kings team. And I've told you before, I think they do make the play-in. That sentence, that phrase right there might make an appearance again and on the record here in just a few minutes. I think they do make the play-in, but I'd be kidding myself if I said they're much better than the Lakers or they're much better than the Blazers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think they're much better than the Blazers. I take personally, I would take the Blazers over the Kings right now by a hair. But it's a debate. It's a debate. And I don't necessarily disagree with you, Ramie. Somewhere in the high 30s, between the high 30s and low 40s, I think if you get to 40, 41, 42 wins, that's as much as I can give you. I don't see this team, winning 45, 46 games. I think you're going to hover around those high 30s, low 40s. I also think what JJ brought up last week and his on the record, I think he said they'll start 2-8. When you look at the schedule, get ready for it. Again, I think Kings fans have to be mentally prepared for that slow start, and they probably are because of the history. But when you're looking at this team and we talk about them being competitive, like I think through the first 3 weeks or so, you and I are going to get a lot of calls and a lot of texts and a lot of YouTube chats killing us. Oh, I thought you said the Kings were going to be competitive. Their schedule out of the box is very difficult, so I'm prepared for them to get off to a pretty bad start. I would say if they get off to a good start, that makes me feel even more bullish. The other thing as well, I was kind of thinking of like, what does this all mean if they don't get into the play-in? And there are some huge ramifications for this basketball team if they fail to get into the play-in. Their GM, I think, is gone. We talked about that, right? If they fail to get into the play-in, and some would argue if they don't get into the playoffs, not just the play-in, the playoffs, that Monty McNair is gone. I think you lose your GM if that's the case. I also think, let's not forget, Domas has 2 years left on that contract. And you have to figure out if he is a piece of the puzzle in the long term. If you end up missing the play-in tournament this year and say you win 35 games, 34 games, then there's a big question about Domas's future here. Does he want to stay here? Do you put all your chips in the middle of the table for, next season and hold on to him? Do you start talking to other teams about trades? And you would also have to think about Fox, Ramie. We've talked about it. This year is a big proving year for him to be the number one guy, the leader of this team. So there's a lot hinging on this season from the front office down to the floor.
And also, I mean, all those things are interconnected, Nick. If Monty McNair is no longer the GM of this team after this year is over, the Sabonis-Fox tandem, that's his baby. You know what I mean? And another GM is going to want to come in here and not necessarily blow the whole thing out. Maybe he likes De'Aaron Fox. Maybe he likes Domas Sabonis,
right.
One or both or the two of them. But there's a good chance that a new guy's going to want to come in here and put his stamp on the team and find a different big two or big three and send those guys packing for draft picks or whatever the case might be. This is a huge season when you talk about the direction that the Kings are going to go in. And do they stay on this trajectory with this group of guys, or is it going to be another disappointing season and back to the drawing board? I will say this, though. The other day we were talking about those Paul George comments of him saying that the Kings are a team that could cause some problems for some people in the Western Conference.
Yep.
And I said he's more the anomaly than the norm when you talk about how people are looking at the Kings because of the playoff drought and what their narrative is. And by the way, the Mariners are about to clinch a playoff spot tonight, which would make the Kings the longest running playoff drought in American professional sports.
Thanks for pointing that out.
If they do that tonight. And I said until they do something, legitimately do something to change people's perception of them, they will continue to be a punchline and will continue to be looked at like that. Man, Zach Lowe, as far as people who talk about and write about this sport, one of the more prominent voices and people in that industry, and not a guy who just throws around fake praise or is out here trying to
very analytical,
trying to make hot takes.
Yep.
He if he says what he's saying about the Sacramento Kings, I think he believes it. And so, Nick, I might have to come to your side of things of thinking the perception of this Kings team might be changing when you hear
the water's warm. We'll
the Zach
welcome
Lowe's and the Kevin Peltons of the world saying, yeah, no, this Kings team could be something.
Time to check out Coastside Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. In 90 seconds, all four of us will go on the